Hello, everyone. This is Gene Georg History here, and as you can see from the title of the video, I kind of want to talk about Francophone Latin America, or if this is even a thing. Obviously, the main purpose of my channel is to talk about Caribbean countries, Caribbean people, or the Caribbean diaspora, and everything that entails it. And with that in mind, and me talking specifically about Francophone Latin America, or whether that's a thing, my main reference point for this video is going to be Haiti, though I am going to reference Louisiana Creoles and Quebecois people, since they are all Francophone groups in the Americas, even though two of those are no longer, or were never, countries. Sorry, they're separate colonies, but they aren't countries, with the exception of Haiti. So that's kind of the gist of the video. But before we get deep into this process, I do feel like we need to go over a few important definitions. So the first definition that I am going into is Latin, and it's defined by Britannica as an Indo-European language in the Italic group and ancestral to the modern Romance languages. And we are going to get into what the Romance languages are. And this originated in what is now known as modern Italy. And it's a highly inflected language with many grammatical categories such as gender, case, declension, conjugation, tense, person, mood, voice, aspect, and number. It was the main language of ancient Rome and its empire, and later became the language of science, laws, and religion in Europe. And while the language in itself isn't as common, though some people see it as a dead language, it has branched off into 4 or 5 modern languages that are very well known, and we're about to get into that now. Now that we have the first definition over and done with, we need to get into the second definition, and that is the Romance languages. And this is defined in Wikipedia as a group of related languages that evolved from Vulgar Latin, the spoken form of Latin used during the Roman Empire. So Latin was the original language, and the Romance languages are branches of that original source. Major Romance languages include French, Italian, Spanish, Portuguese, and Romanian, and all of those countries are in the southern area or the Mediterranean area of Europe. Today, there are over 900 million native speakers of Romance languages worldwide, primarily in the Americas, Europe, and parts of Africa. And we all know colonization has a large part to do with this. These languages are characterized by their shared vocabulary, grammar, and syntax, reflecting from their common origin. So now that we have the languages or the definitions of these languages broken down, we are going to move on to how these terminologies and languages carry on to geography and land. Now it is time to define Latin America, and according to ThoughtCo, Latin America refers to the region of the world that spans 2 continents: North America, which also includes Central America and the Caribbean, and South America. So we're looking at North America and South America, though I've heard different versions of this where it only talks about Central America, the Caribbean, and South America, but that might be something we get into later on in the video. So, it includes 19 sovereign nations and 1 non-independent territory, i.e. Puerto Rico. The term is generally understood to consist of the entire continent of South America, in addition to Mexico, Central America, and the islands of the Caribbean, whose inhabitants speak a Romance language. And just from the latter part of this definition, it definitely discounts North America in reference to the United States and Canada, because those are Anglo-speaking countries, despite them having areas within those countries that are Romance language based. And the final definition that I want to go over is Latino, and according to Wikipedia, Latina refers to inhabitants of the United States who have cultural ties to Latin America. It is often used as a shorthand for the Spanish word Latino Americano or the Portuguese Latino Americano. The term includes people born in or with ancestors from Latin America, including Brazilians. Okay, so this definition is kind of interesting in a few ways because one, it references the inhabitants of the United States, and I feel like this is the main focus because Latino, when it comes to a group of people, is mainly used in the United States, though it seems like it's a bit more commonly recognized as being a thing within the Latin American countries, though they themselves don't call themselves Latino in their own countries, as they have their own identifiers when it comes to categorizing their own people. It also references Spanish and Portuguese when it came to the definitions and the wording. So, yet again, it excludes Francophone, Italian, and Romanian, though there's really a lack of an Italian and Romanian presence in the Americas when it comes to the colonization compared to the French. So, it just puts an emphasis on the Spanish and the Portuguese. So, with Haiti, it is a country that has French as a main language. They were colonized by the French, hence there's still being a lot of French influence in Haiti years after going independent. It is in the Caribbean islands, which is considered a part of Latin America. It is a part of North America that is south of the United States, which could be considered a part of Latin America. The people there are descendants of French-speaking people, and colonization or colonial conquistadors, or whatever the proper term is for the French, and they do derive from a Romance language, i.e., French, and because they derived from a Romance language, they also derive from a Latin language as well. So in this case, they definitely should be considered Latinos and Latin Americans. But things are a lot more complicated when it comes to that. It's essentially the same thing with Quebec and Louisiana, with them being French descended people, which means that they are Romance language descended people, meaning that they are Latin descended people as well. But those two are one, they are a state in Louisiana's case and a province in Quebec's case, though there were moments where they're kind of their own thing, but that's not the case currently. And two, they are above Latin America, where the United States and Canada aren't considered a part of Latin America when it comes to a geographic point of view. And they are also a part of Anglo-run and Anglo-colonized countries, so that kind of disparages them, despite fitting the linguistic and colonial elements. Specifically, when it came to Louisianians descending from French people and Quebecois people descending from French people. Alrighty, so now it's time to really look into why, despite all of this, Haiti isn't really considered a Latino country, or not like the other Spanish speaking ones. And a lot of this has to do with culture. It may fit a lot of the other identifiers, but culture is the lived experience and the shared experiences of a group of people that makes them similar and what they base their livelihoods and their neighborhoods and their customs on. And Haitians are very strong with identifying with being Haitian and being black. And how do I say this? Latin America in general doesn't. As we all generally know, there's a lot of anti-blackness within Latin America, where even in the media in their own country, there has been and still kind of is a lot of attempts to bury the Afro-Latinos within their own Hispanic Latino countries. So a land like Haiti that has overwhelmingly black people, not mulatto people, but black people who are like almost 100% sub-Saharan African. it causes definitely a distinction, and especially with the relationship between Haiti and Dominican Republic, I do think some of that definitely has to do with the history of blackness and anti-blackness within Hispaniola. So I think the fact that Haiti, which was also the first place in the Western world to go independent, and they are very strong with their black pride and their Afro pride. It makes them stand out compared to the rest of Latin America, where the purpose in a lot of these countries is to whiten the race and better their race, where that isn't a thing in Haiti. So I do think the fact that Haiti is a black country with black people in it and there being very little mixture is one of the main reasons why they aren't really considered a Latino country filled with Latino people. And they don't even call themselves Afro Latinos like that, even though the label technically would fit, but it's just something that's not really done. So I do think that blackness definitely has to do with why Haiti is kind of othered within Latin America, where in almost all of Latin America, they are either mestizos, white Latinos, or mulattoes, though there's even some Indio Latinos in certain populations like Peru and Bolivia in comparison to Haiti, where it's just overwhelmingly black people. In fact, if I'm remembering it correctly, I do think that Haiti is the country that has the least admixture amongst black people within all of the countries in North America. And yes, that includes all of the Anglo-Caribbean countries as well, and even African Americans and African Canadians and black people within those two countries as well. So I think with Haiti technically being the most black when it came to having the least admixture, definitely makes them stand out amongst generally everyone. I think the second and also the major reason why Haitians really aren't considered Latinos like that is because they don't want to be. um, I think this is a deep answer. One, I feel like they don't want to be identified as Latinos because they know they stand out compared to all other Latinos and that they don't really fit in. And I do think a part of this definitely has to do with race, kind of like what I just mentioned. And two, another part of it is because they are Francophone. So those are two very huge differences that are also tied to culture. I also think them being the first country to go completely independent and them wiping away a lot of their ties to their colonizers compared to a lot of the Latin American countries, even though most of them are independent now, definitely causes them to be outliers. Haitians are very proud of their identity, they are very proud of their culture, and they're very proud of what they created in Haiti. And a lot of them feel like them, including themselves as Latino, feels like that would wipe away their Haitian Afro descendant identity and it would erase their customs. And I also think a lot of them know that they wouldn't be treated well if they were to fully embrace and go into the Latino identity for a lot of the reasons that I just mentioned. And they don't see themselves as Latino. And a part of this definitely has to do with the fact that Latino and Hispanic in a lot of people's lives when it comes to the day to day, Latino and Hispanic are kind of seen as interchangeable, though when you look into their definitions, they're really not. Haitians have a lot of pride in their identity. They are very strong with their identity and beliefs, and a lot of the stuff that they created with their culture, their food, and their atmosphere is very specific to them. It also might be a generational thing where a lot of the younger Haitians or Haitian diasporic people are wanting to identify more with being Latino since they technically fit that definition, where a lot of the older ones really don't give an F about it. And they feel like it's kind of performative, and some of them actually see it as self hatred where, oh, you're claiming Latino because it's seen as something that isn't black. So you claiming to a non-black label means that you don't like blackness. So I do think there's a clash between certain Haitians when it comes to that, where some Haitians see claiming Latino as being anti-black. I also think of the whole Afro Latino subject, and just from what I've seen, there has been a bit of controversy when it comes to this label because, number one, it seems like something that's mainly identified or used as an identifier of American Latinos who are either black Latinos or mixed Latinos. That term mainly being used in America rather than people living in these Latin American countries who are of African descent identifying as that. But when it comes to Afro Latino, or at least the representation, you see a lot of Afro Latinos being represented by mixed people, and a lot of these people would be considered mulatto, not black, in their Latin American countries. So for Haiti, which is a very black country, to technically fit in the Afro Latino label, since they are black Latinos when it comes to the definitive terminology, they might not feel like they fit in with a lot of the Afro Latinos in Latin America, not only just from a linguistic standpoint, but due to a racial standpoint, since when the average Afro Latino, they may not even be mulattoes, have more admixture compared to Haitians or the black Haitians, but two, a lot of the Afro Latinos that are proud to be Afro Latinos and they are really pushing that label, they tend to be mulatto Latinos. And just from the history with the Dominican Republic and Haiti, based on those two demographics, i.e., the mulattoes and the black people, they might not feel like they fit in with the Afro Latino label at all. So that might be another contributor as to why a lot of Haitians, on average, don't really care for the Latino term. Also, some people see Afro Latinos differently. Some people see the term Afro Latino as being black people who are Latinos, so unambiguous, monoracial, very obviously black people being Latin American or Latin, no, where others see it as anyone who is of black descent or African descent can be Latino. And the thing with descent is that it means that you could be mixed with other things and be considered an Afro Latino. You may even have a drop of African descent or African Latino descent, but you can identify as an Afro Latina, which is why you see a lot of mulatto Latinos fit under this. And heck, you even see some Puerto Ricans and Cubans who have like 20% African admixture at best, sometimes identify as an Afro Latino, depending on if they want to get something out of it. So I think a lot of it leaves for a lot of loopholes that a lot of Haitians just might not want to deal with or feel comfortable being a part of. And another point that I kind of wants to mention is that it seems like the Franco Caribbean, or especially just Franco America in general, is a lot more isolated compared to the Hispanic Americas or the Hispanic Caribbean and the Anglo Americans, or specifically the Anglo Caribbeans. When you really look at the Franco America, you have Haiti, a few the islands like, sorry, French Guiana is not an island, ignore that, but a few islands like Guadeloupe, Martinique, St. Barthélemy, St. Martin, Dominica, and St. Lucia, but some of them became Anglophone, and a lot of those islands are territories. They're not actually their own countries. And outside of Haiti and French Guiana, but French Guiana isn't an island, all the other islands that has Franco influence are very, very, very small, and they have a very small population as well. So there isn't as many of them. And I also kind of just tie this to them being so isolated amongst one another. Is why there isn't a bigger Franco Caribbean group compared to the Anglo Caribbean and the Hispanic Caribbean. And in Haiti's case, it's really surrounded by either Anglo Caribbean countries, mainly Jamaica, or Latin American countries like Cuba, the Dominican Republic, and the territory of Puerto Rico. And all five of those places are a part of the Greater Antilles. And then when you have other territories or states or provinces like Quebec and Louisiana, they obviously didn't remain their own thing anymore, where they became a part of the bigger Anglo countries of the United States of America in Louisiana's case and Canada in Quebec's case. I know with Quebec there's a lot of fight over them wanting their own sovereignty, but that hasn't happened yet. And just from the fact that there are French communities in these Anglo countries has them very isolated as well, not only from the Anglo countries, but the other Franco camaraderies as well. And they're some of the only Franco communities in the larger Anglo countries. And I do think a part of this has to do with the colonization of the French not being as successful compared to the Anglo colonization and the Hispanic colonization, though those two handled their colonization very differently, but they both were a lot more successful compared to the French, where the French actually lost quite a lot of land, whether it was through annexation or them losing certain wars. But I do think that's kind of why the Francophone Latinos doesn't have a large enough community, and it kind of explains why they aren't considered Latinos, though that brings up another point that I'm going to get into. And it's also why I feel like a lot of Francophone communities, like a Haiti, like a Louisiana, and like a Quebec, are fighting so hard for their identity. They're very rigid with it, and they really want to keep whatever Francophone influence that they still have over their own communities and identities and cultures. The final point that I kind of want to just bring up for the video is that, yes, definitions to words, terms, and terminology are very important, but they don't necessarily equate to the living experience. So why am I mentioning this? We went over all of the definitions that apply to Latino and Latin America in the very beginning, and Haiti fits most, if not all, of them. But the truth is, the lived experience of Haitians has nothing to do with the lived experience of Latinos. Obviously, there's racial elements to this, there's linguistic elements to this, there's cultural elements to this, there's probably even religious elements to this as well. But Haitians do not see themselves living the Latino experience. Latinos do not see Haitians living the Latino experience. And Haitians see themselves as unique, and Latinos don't really see Haitians as a part of them on average. And when you're putting it all together, Haitians has a different day-to-day than Latinos on average. And I think that's what kind of stands out the most, really. Anyways, thank everyone for watching, and there'll definitely be more videos like this soon. I might do more content breaking down Franco-Caribbean countries and just French colonization overall. Maybe so, maybe not, but there's definitely more coming up in the pipeline, and thank everyone. Take care.